The challenge that started everything. The arrival. The transport ship's engines hummed their final notes as Sergeant Marcus, Tank, Rodriguez stepped onto the metallic platform of Station Harmony. The name was ironic, considering what would happen here in just 3 days. Tank earned his nickname not from his size, though at 6'4" he was impressive, but from his ability to absorb punishment and keep moving forward. Today, he wore his dress blues, polished to mirror shine, representing humanity at this crucial diplomatic gathering. Station Harmony floated in the neutral zone between Earth territory and the Corvan Empire. Built specifically for interspecies diplomacy, it housed representatives from 12 different alien civilizations. The station's architecture was a compromise of curves and angles, trying to accommodate species that ranged from the crystalline Vorthak to the liquid-formed Aquarians. First Contact Protocol. Tank's boots echoed through the corridors as he followed the diplomatic escort, a nervous young lieutenant named Peters. The walls displayed holographic art from various worlds, a gesture of unity that felt more like a museum exhibition. They passed groups of aliens in the common areas, each species maintaining careful distances from others. "Remember, Sergeant," Peters whispered, "you're here as a goodwill gesture. The Corvan delegation specifically requested to meet our military representatives. They're fascinated by human combat techniques." Tank nodded, though something in his gut told him this wasn't going to be a simple meet and greet. The Corvans were known throughout the galaxy as master warriors. Their species had evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strongest survived. They stood 8 feet tall, with chitinous armor naturally grown from their skin and 4 arms that could crush steel. The Corvan delegation. The main diplomatic hall buzzed with activity. Translators moved between groups, their universal devices chirping constantly. Tank spotted the Corvan delegation immediately. They were hard to miss. 5 massive beings stood in formation, their leader identifiable by the golden markings on his natural armor. "That's Warmaster Thoktar," Peters explained. "He's their greatest champion. Undefeated in over 300 battles." As they approached, Tank noticed the Corvan leader's 4 yellow eyes studying him with intense interest. When the introductions were made, Thoktar's translator crackled to life. "Your species interests me, human. I have heard tales of your combat prowess, though I find them difficult to believe given your soft appearance." Tank maintained his diplomatic smile. "We've learned to make do with what we have, Warmaster." The misunderstanding. The conversation continued for several minutes, with various species representatives joining the discussion. Tank found himself fielding questions about human military tactics, physical conditioning, and combat psychology. The aliens seemed particularly fascinated by humanity's use of tools and technology to overcome physical limitations. It was during a lull in the conversation that Thoktar made his fateful statement. The translator device buzzed, then delivered what would later be called the sentence that started a war. "I propose a demonstration of skill between our species. A friendly combat ritual to show mutual respect." The room fell silent. Several alien diplomats exchanged nervous glances. Tank looked to Peters, who was frantically consulting his diplomatic protocols on a tablet. "What kind of demonstration?" Tank asked carefully. "Single combat. No weapons. Pure physical skill. It is how the Corvan people show respect to worthy opponents." The decision. Ambassador Sterling, the senior human diplomat, materialized beside them as if summoned by trouble. His weathered face showed decades of navigating interstellar politics. "Warmaster Thoktar, while we appreciate the honor of your proposal, perhaps we could arrange a less physical demonstration of our respective capabilities?" But Thoktar's translator was already working. Among the Corvan, to refuse such an offer is to declare oneself weak and unworthy of alliance. Surely the humans do not wish to appear weak? Tank felt the weight of the moment. Around them, representatives from a dozen species watched with interest. This wasn't just about 2 individuals anymore, it was about humanity's place in the galactic community. I accept, Tank said, his voice carrying clearly across the hall. Ambassador Sterling's face went pale. Sergeant Rodriguez, perhaps we should discuss. With respect, sir, the challenge has been made and accepted. When and where, War Master? The setup. Thoktar's mandibles clicked in what Tank assumed was pleasure. Tomorrow, at midday. The station's recreational facility can be modified for our purposes. The combat will continue until one yields or cannot continue. As the crowd dispersed, Tank caught sight of his reflection in a nearby viewing port. Behind him, the stars wheeled silently, indifferent to the drama unfolding on their tiny artificial world. In less than 24 hours, he would face a creature that outweighed him by 200 pounds and had 4 arms to his 2. Peters appeared at his elbow. Sir, are you sure about this? The Corvin have never lost a formal challenge. Tank straightened his dress uniform and headed for his quarters. Then I guess it's time someone taught them what losing feels like. Little did he know that his confidence would prove justified in the most spectacular way possible, and that those 12 seconds of combat would echo across the galaxy for years to come. 12 seconds of chaos. The arena preparation. Colonel James Ironwall Harrison arrived at the recreational facility 2 hours before the scheduled combat. His nickname came from his legendary defensive strategies during the Martian Rebellion, where he held impossible positions until reinforcements arrived. Today, he served as the official human observer, tasked with ensuring the fight remained within diplomatic bounds. The facility had been transformed overnight. The usual exercise equipment was gone, replaced by a circular combat arena surrounded by energy barriers. Seating rose in tiers around the space, already filling with representatives from every species aboard the station. The air hummed with tension and translation devices. Harrison watched the technical crews make final adjustments to the recording equipment. Every angle would be captured, every second documented. What none of them realized was that they were about to witness the most analyzed 12 seconds in military history. Pre-fight tensions. War Master Thoktar entered first, his 4 arms moving in ritualistic patterns as he prepared for combat. His natural armor gleamed under the arena lights, each plate overlapping perfectly with the next. The Corvin delegation chanted in their native tongue, a deep, rhythmic sound that seemed to shake the station's hull. Impressive, muttered Captain Reynolds, Harrison's aide. Look at the reach on those arms. And that armor, it's like fighting a walking tank. Harrison nodded grimly. He'd reviewed Tank service record twice. The man was tough, skilled, and had never backed down from a fight. But this wasn't a barroom brawl or even a battlefield skirmish. This was facing a creature designed by evolution to be the perfect warrior. The human enters. Tank walked into the arena wearing simple combat fatigues and boots. No armor, no weapons, just a human being who looked impossibly small next to his opponent. The crowd's murmur shifted to concerned whispers. Several alien diplomats were already calculating the political fallout from what appeared to be inevitable human defeat. He looks calm, Reynolds observed. Too calm, Harrison thought. Tank's face showed no emotion as he performed his warm-up stretches. His movements were economical, precise. Harrison had seen that look before. It was the expression of a man who had already decided how the fight would end. The rules and rituals. Ambassador Sterling stepped forward as the official mediator. His voice carried clearly through the arena's acoustics. This combat is undertaken in the spirit of mutual respect and understanding between our species. The fight continues until one participant yields or is unable to continue. No weapons, no outside interference. Thoktar raised all 4 arms skyward and roared. The sound was deafening, primal, designed to intimidate. Several smaller alien species actually fled the arena. Tank simply rolled his shoulders and cracked his knuckles. You may begin when ready, Sterling announced, stepping back quickly. The first move. Thoktar's opening gambit was textbook Corvin combat doctrine. He charged forward, using his massive size and forearm advantage to overwhelm his opponent quickly. His plan was simple: grab the human with his lower arms while striking with his upper ones. The charge looked unstoppable. 8 feet of armored alien muscle thundered across the arena floor, each step shaking the platform. In the stands, the Corvin delegation roared approval. This was how their species had conquered 12 worlds. Tank waited until the last possible second, then moved. The impossible dodge. What happened next defied several alien species' understanding of physics. Tank didn't step aside, he dropped low and rolled forward, directly between Thoktar's legs. The War Master's momentum carried him past his target, his grasping arms closing on empty air. Impossible, breathed a Vorthak observer. No creature can move that quickly. But Tank wasn't done. As Thoktar struggled to turn his massive frame around, Tank came up behind him. The human's hands found the junction where the War Master's natural armor segments met at the base of his neck. The pressure point. Harrison leaned forward in his seat. He'd seen Tank use this technique once before, during a training exercise on Europa. The human nervous system had vulnerabilities, but apparently, so did the Corvin system. Tank's fingers found the exact spot where Thoktar's neural pathways converged. He pressed hard, using a technique borrowed from ancient Earth martial arts but adapted for alien anatomy. The effect was immediate and devastating. Thoktar's roar cut off mid-sound. His forearm spasmed, then went limp. The massive alien warrior swayed like a felled tree, then crashed to the arena floor. The aftermath. Silence filled the arena. The recording equipment continued to hum, capturing every detail of the War Master's motionless form. Tank stood over his opponent, breathing hard but victorious. 12 seconds, Reynolds whispered, checking his chronometer. The whole fight lasted 12 seconds. The Corvin delegation was in chaos. Several of their number had rushed to the arena floor, checking on their fallen champion. Thoktar was alive but unconscious, his nervous system temporarily disrupted by Tank's precise strike. The reaction. What followed was unlike anything in diplomatic history. The alien observers sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they'd witnessed. The greatest warrior in Corvin history, a being who had never known defeat, had been brought down by a creature half his size in less time than it took to draw breath. Tank extended a hand to help Thoktar to his feet as the War Master slowly regained consciousness. It was a gesture of respect, fighter to fighter. But the gesture was lost in the chaos that followed. Ambassador Sterling's face had gone white. He understood the implications immediately. This wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. Humanity had just announced itself as a force to be reckoned with in the most public way possible. The recording goes viral. Within hours, the footage had spread across every communication network in known space. The 12-second fight was analyzed frame by frame, dissected by military strategists and combat experts from 100 worlds. The consensus was universal: humans were more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Colonel Harrison filed his report that evening, but he knew it was already too late. The damage was done. In trying to prove humanity's worthiness as allies, they had instead proven themselves as threats. As he watched the news feeds from across the galaxy, Harrison couldn't shake the feeling that those 12 seconds had changed everything. The age of human diplomacy was over. What came next would be written in fire and blood across the stars. Diplomatic nightmare. The emergency session. Ambassador David Sterling hadn't slept in 36 hours. The diplomatic quarters aboard Station Harmony buzzed with frantic activity as representatives from 12 species demanded explanations, apologies, and in some cases, reparations for what they were calling the human deception. Sterling's decades of experience in interstellar relations had prepared him for many crises, but not this. The footage of Tank's victory had spread like wildfire through galactic communication networks. What was meant to be a gesture of friendship had become a declaration of war capabilities. The Corvin Empire is demanding immediate expulsion of all human representatives, reported his chief aide, Minister Patricia Vance. The Aquarian Collective is threatening to withdraw from the trade agreements. And the crystalline hegemony. She paused, checking her tablet. They're requesting immediate military assessments of human capabilities. The Corvin response. War Master Thoktar sat across from Sterling in the neutral meeting chamber, his 4 arms crossed in a posture that the human recognized as profound displeasure. The translator device between them crackled to life. You have made fools of us before the galaxy, Thoktar's mechanical voice declared. For centuries, the Corvin have been the standard by which warrior species are measured. Now that standard is broken. Sterling leaned forward, his hands clasped diplomatically. War Master, with respect, this was a friendly competition. Sergeant Rodriguez showed remarkable skill, but... Skill? Thoktar's mandibles clicked aggressively. Your warrior defeated our greatest champion in 12 seconds. 12 seconds. Do you understand what this means for Corvin standing among the star nations? The implications were staggering. The Corvin Empire's entire political structure was built on martial supremacy. Their trade agreements, territorial claims, and diplomatic influence all stemmed from their reputation as unstoppable warriors. Tank's victory had shattered that reputation in less time than it took to fire a warning shot. The ripple effect. News of the fight had reached the Corvin homeworld within hours. Sterling's intelligence reports painted a picture of civil unrest as the population struggled to process their champion's defeat. 3 colony worlds had already declared independence, sensing weakness in the Empire's leadership. It's not just the Corvin, Minister Vance continued her briefing. The Vorthak Confederacy is reconsidering their non-aggression pact. They're asking why they should fear a species that can be defeated so easily by humans. Sterling rubbed his temples. The galactic balance of power had been maintained for centuries through careful positioning and mutual respect. Each species had their role, the Corvin as enforcers, the Vorthak as technologists, the Aquarians as mediators. Humanity had been the newcomers, the junior partners learning their place. Now, suddenly, they were the unknown quantity that had upset everything. The military assessment. General Patricia, Stormbreaker, Wells arrived on the next transport, her presence adding weight to the diplomatic crisis. Her reputation preceded her, she was the architect of humanity's successful defense of the Titan mining colony against pirate raids. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, she reported to Sterling's Emergency Council. Our intelligence networks are reporting massive military buildups in 3 star systems. The Corvin aren't just embarrassed, they're preparing for war. Sterling studied the tactical displays that General Wells had brought. Fleet movements, communication intercepts, industrial capacity reports, all pointed to the same conclusion. The galaxy was preparing for conflict, and humanity was at the center of it. The ultimatum. The crisis reached its breaking point when the Corvin delegation delivered their formal response. War Master Thoktar stood before the assembled diplomatic corps, his armor now bearing the ritual scars of dishonor. The Corvin Empire demands satisfaction for the humiliation suffered at human hands. We propose a series of formal combats, 100 of our warriors against 100 of theirs. The losing species will accept client status under the winner. The chamber erupted in chaos. Client status meant slavery in all but name. It was a demand that no sovereign species could accept. Sterling rose slowly, his years of diplomatic training taking over. The Earth Alliance cannot accept such terms. We propose instead a series of joint military exercises, designed to... Exercises? Thoktar's translator spat. You speak of games while our honor bleeds. We have made our demand. Accept, or face the consequences. The point of no return. The moment Sterling declined the ultimatum, the galaxy shifted. The Corvin delegation stormed out of the chamber, their heavy footsteps echoing through the station corridors. Within hours, their ships had departed, taking with them centuries of carefully maintained diplomatic relations. The other species watched with growing alarm as the crisis spiraled beyond control. The Aquarian Collective's ambassador, a fluid being named Surge of Tides, spoke for many when he declared, "The humans have shown us all to be weak. How long before they decide we are unnecessary?" The declaration. 3 days after Tank's 12-second victory, the Corvan Empire made their formal announcement. The message was broadcast across every communication network in known space, translated into hundreds of languages and dialects. Let it be known that the Corvan Empire hereby declares the human species an existential threat to galactic peace. We call upon all civilized worlds to join us in containing this menace before they consume us all. Sterling watched the broadcast from his quarters, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. Outside his window, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, indifferent to the politics of the tiny beings who scurried between them. The alliance crumbles. The response was swift and devastating. 7 major species formally joined the Corvan Declaration within 24 hours. Trade routes were closed, diplomatic missions recalled, and communication channels severed. The careful web of alliances that had maintained peace for 3 centuries unraveled in a matter of days. General Wells found Sterling in his quarters as the last of the alien delegations departed Station Harmony. The massive facility, once bustling with interspecies cooperation, now felt like a tomb. "The Senate has authorized me to begin military preparations," she reported quietly. "They want a full assessment of our defensive capabilities within the week." Sterling nodded, his face reflecting the weight of unintended consequences. "A friendly sparring match," he said bitterly. "That's all it was supposed to be." As the ambassador stared out at the stars, he couldn't help but wonder if those 12 seconds had doomed humanity to a war they never wanted against enemies they barely understood. The age of diplomacy was over. What came next would be written in fire and blood across the cosmos. When Titans clash. The War Room. General Victor Steelheart Blackwood stood before the massive holographic display in Earth's Strategic Command Center, watching red icons multiply across the star map like a spreading infection. Each icon represented a hostile fleet, and there were far too many of them. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had never lost a battle. 17 species have formally joined the Corvan Alliance, reported Colonel Sarah Martinez, his chief intelligence officer. Combined fleet strength, approximately 47,000 vessels. They're calling it the Galactic Defense Coalition. Blackwood's jaw tightened. His nickname came from his ability to make impossible decisions without hesitation, but even he felt the weight of what humanity now faced. 47,000 ships against Earth's combined fleet of 800. The first strike. The war began not with a massive assault, but with a single ship. The Corvan destroyer, Vengeance of Thoktar, dropped out of hyperspace near the agricultural colony of New Eden. Its captain, War Commander Grektios, had one simple mission: make humanity bleed. The colony's defenses were minimal, a few orbital platforms and a handful of patrol ships. The attack lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, New Eden's population of 50,000 was gone, and the colony's infrastructure lay in ruins. Blackwood received the news in his command center, the holographic display showing the smoking remains of humanity's first major agricultural expansion. The message was clear: this would not be a war of conquest, but of extermination. The human response. "They want to see what we're capable of," Blackwood said to his assembled staff. "Let's show them." The retaliation came from the 7th Fleet, led by Admiral Rebecca Tsunami Chen. Her nickname came from her preferred tactic: overwhelming force applied at the moment of maximum impact. The fleet's target was the Corvan Supply Depot at Kepler 186f, a heavily fortified facility that fed their entire war effort in the outer systems. The battle was a masterpiece of human tactical innovation. While the Corvan expected a direct assault, Chen's fleet used a combination of stealth technology and psychological warfare that left the enemy commanders confused and reactive. The stealth assault. The human ships approached through the system's asteroid belt, their heat signatures masked by the space debris. The Corvan defenders, accustomed to the straightforward tactics of other species, were unprepared for humanity's gift for deception. Remember, Chen broadcast to her fleet, "We're not trying to match them ship for ship. We're trying to break their will to fight." The first wave of attacks targeted the depot's communication arrays, leaving the Corvan forces deaf and blind. The second wave struck their command ship, not to destroy it, but to disable it and force the crew to evacuate. The third wave was pure psychological warfare, human ships broadcasting surrender demands in the Corvan language, offering quarter to those who yielded. The Corvan confusion. War Commander Vex Thul, the depot's commanding officer, had never faced an enemy that offered mercy. Corvan military doctrine was simple: fight until victory or death. The concept of surrender was literally untranslatable in their language. "What do they want?" he demanded of his translator. They offer to spare our lives if we cease resistance," came the bewildered response. "Impossible. Warriors do not beg for life." But as human ships continued to disable rather than destroy Corvan vessels, something unprecedented happened. Individual Corvan crews began to surrender. Not from cowardice, but from confusion. They had been trained to fight to the death, not to face an enemy that preferred to capture than kill. The cascade effect. Admiral Chen's victory at Kepler 186f triggered a cascade of similar battles across the galaxy. Human fleets, smaller but more adaptable than their enemies, began winning through superior tactics and technology. The key was humanity's fundamental misunderstanding of how galactic warfare worked. "They fight like it's a sport," complained War Master Thoktar during an emergency council session. "Where is their honor? Where is their fury?" The answer was simple: humans didn't fight with honor or fury. They fought to win. Every human commander had studied the alien mindset, learned their weaknesses, and exploited them ruthlessly. The unexpected alliance. The war's turning point came from an unexpected source. The Aquarian Collective, originally neutral, made a startling announcement 3 months into the conflict. "We have observed the conduct of both sides," declared their spokesperson, Prime Flow Cascade of Reason. "The humans fight with restraint. They offer mercy to the defeated. They seek to minimize casualties. These are the actions of a species that understands the true cost of war." The collective's defection from neutrality sent shockwaves through the Galactic Defense Coalition. If the Aquarians, known for their logic and analytical capabilities, sided with humanity, what did that say about the righteousness of the war? The Vorthak calculation. The Vorthak Confederacy, master technologists and strategic thinkers, performed their own analysis of the conflict. Their conclusion was devastating to the coalition's morale. Probability of human defeat, 12.7% and falling, reported their prime calculator. Probability of galactic devastation if war continues, 89.3% and rising. The mathematics were clear. Humanity might be outnumbered, but they were winning through superior adaptation and strategic thinking. More importantly, they were winning without destroying the galaxy's infrastructure or population centers. The war's evolution. By the 6th month of the conflict, the war had evolved beyond anyone's expectations. What began as a simple punitive expedition against humanity had become a galaxy-wide examination of military philosophy. The Corvan Alliance fought with traditional tactics, massive fleets, overwhelming firepower, and the expectation of honorable defeat. Humanity fought with innovation, adaptation, and the expectation of victory through intelligence rather than strength. General Blackwood studied the latest tactical reports from his command center. Human casualties were surprisingly light, but the psychological impact on the enemy was devastating. Species that had fought alongside the Corvan for centuries were beginning to question their alliance. The price of war. As the conflict entered its 7th month, the galaxy began to count the cost. Entire star systems had been abandoned, trade routes disrupted, and the careful balance of interstellar civilization threatened with collapse. "We're winning," Colonel Martinez reported to Blackwood. "But at what cost? Half the galaxy now sees us as either saviors or destroyers. There's no middle ground left." Blackwood nodded grimly. His forces had proven human superiority in warfare, but that victory came with a price. The galaxy would never again see humanity as the junior partner in galactic civilization. As he watched the tactical displays update with each passing hour, Blackwood couldn't help but wonder if Tank's 12-second victory had been worth the price the galaxy was now paying. The war was far from over, and the final cost was yet to be calculated.